Hi boys and girls, I'm here today to talk to you today about the Eucharist. All of you have made your first Eucharist. You know that Jesus is present in the host when we receive Him in Holy Communion. I know that this past year a lot of you haven't been able to do that on a regular basis because of COVID, but hopefully soon you'll be coming back to Mass and receiving the Lord regularly. I just wanted to talk to you today about two things. When we receive the Lord, we should think about two things. One, it's a meal. If we look at the altar, it looks like a table, like you would sit down maybe at a table and eat a meal off of it. And it looks like that because it is that. And part of the Eucharist is a meal. In the Old Testament, people gathered together what the Passover meal, remembering the events of the Jewish people leaving Egypt and escaping, passing over through the sea to freedom. And so the meal always reminded them of that great Passover, just like we have meals today that remind us of certain events. Thanksgiving reminds us of our freedom and of our being in a new country and freedom to worship. 4th of July picnics remind us of our independence and freedom. Christmas reminds us of Jesus' birth and gathering together. Easter reminds us of His resurrection. So we have meals that remind us of things as well. Well, every time we come to church and celebrate the Eucharist, it's a reminder of the meal. And what we're reminded of is of Jesus' Last Supper with His disciples when He gave Him His own body and blood in the form of bread and wine. So that's one thing we should always remember. But the second thing is, Mass is also a sacrifice. And again, look at this. We think of it as a table, but it's also, we call it an altar. And the reason we call it an altar is because altars are places where sacrifices are offered. In the Old Testament, people brought their finest crops or their best animal, their sheep or their goats, and they actually slaughtered and burnt those offerings on an altar and burnt them the sacrifice so they would go up to God. But God says to us that the real sacrifice that's pleasing to Him is not these vegetables and fruits and lambs, but the real sacrifice was His Son, Jesus, who died on the cross for us. So that's what we celebrate here, the ultimate sacrifice of Jesus giving His own body and blood on the cross. And on this altar, every time we have Mass, we remember that. So we come together as a meal to celebrate and think about Jesus giving us His body and blood in the bread and wine, and then as a sacrifice of His giving His body and blood on the cross. And it shows us two things. It shows us that Jesus wants to be part of us. The meal we take into our bodies, He becomes a part of us. And the sacrifice shows His great love for us. How much does a person love? If you love a person enough to give your own life, you can tell that He loves you a lot. So those two things, the intimacy and the love that Jesus has for us, is celebrated in the Eucharist.